To the brave, space holds more opportunities than any planet. But only the most daring go this far. Tales to the Void presents The Long Drive.
Day 0. I stood before Captain Everick and his ship, the Morrigan. While she was being prepped for the journey, I was being given a final once-over. "Alright, kid," the pot-bellied captain said loudly. "This is your last chance to stay. Otherwise, your ass will be on that ship for the entire drive. And I've got no desire to hear you crying for home. That, and there aren't any places to drop you off after here. Of course, you could always abandon ship if you got desperate enough," the crewman said with a grin. "Capullo, shut your damn mouth and get inside. I want those engines finished being checked before the ship is fueled." "Of course, Your Excellency, whose guiding light will lead us to prosperity when—" "Capullo!" the captain yelled, his face quickly flushing red. The wiry engineer rushed into the ship before the captain could really start to lay into him. That meant I was about to get the brunt of the rage. "I'll make it simple, kid. Stay or go," he shouted at me. I pretended to weigh my options for a moment. "Don't worry about me, Captain. I ain't afraid of a few months in the deep. Heard enough stories about my daddy being a rock jock that I think I can handle it." The color in his face returned to normal as his rage cooled. "That so?" he asked, his voice now only holding a hint of anger. "Who was your daddy?" "Ray Neek," I responded quickly. The fire-haired captain thought. "He was out on the Maria Loca, right?" "Yes, sir." "Well, here's hoping things go better for us. Get your stuff on board and pick a bunk." Day 1. Alright everybody, here's the download. We're on a 16-month run here. 6 to get there, 10 to corral the bastards back to Crimson Logistics. Captain Everick said over the ship-to-ship comms as we led the drive. "I've done drives with most of you, but for the new crews, here's the speech. What I say goes. No question. The good news is that I'll only direct ships, not crews. That's up to your captain to deal with. Secondly, you got a suggestion or a problem with how things are going? Send it up the chain. You try something without talking to a captain first, your pay will be docked before you can say, 'But Captain.' Lastly, we're in this together, and we have each other's backs. I don't care if another crew ran train on your wife or someone stabbed your brother in a bar fight. There's enough shit out here that can kill us that we don't need infighting." He said the last part of that with deadly seriousness. "For supplies, you'll go to Cookie. He's the ornery bastard flying the big-ass hauler in the back." "You better check your tone, boy," a gravelly voice interrupted. "This here hauler's been in more drives than years you've been alive." Cookie's voice was so hoarse it was difficult to tell if the comms were breaking up or not. "Yes, Cookie, we all know there are sons younger than you," Captain Everick responded dismissively. Getting on with what I was saying, if you need something grown, built, repaired, or whatever, you can get it from the cutter and her crew. "God damn it, boy! If I've told you once, I've told you 1,000 times. My ship isn't the cutter, she's..." Captain Everick cut him off. "As long as we're stuck calling you Cookie, you're stuck with the cutter." Captain Everick tapped a few more keys and muted Cookie before he could argue back. "That'll be all from me now. If you have any questions, you can ask my first mate, Sabine. She'll be on the bridge while I do my rounds." The captain lifted his bulk from the captain's chair and walked towards me. "You got any questions, rookie?" I shook my head. "No, sir. Works for me. Let's go." He stepped through the door and led me out of the bridge. "Your main job in this drive is going to be scut work. The kind of jobs that the rest of the crew won't feel like doing or are too busy to get around to. We'll be testing you out at a few different positions, see what you're really good at. Personally, I want you down with the engine. Capullo's good, but it's a fool ship that only has one black hand around." The captain continued lecturing as he led me through the ship. We passed the kitchen, walked over the cargo hold, even took a small detour to one of the guns where a pair of crewmen were arguing about the calibration. Our final destination was the tightly compacted engine room. The majority of the space was taken up by two large engines, both humming at a loud roar. Between the two of them, it was almost impossible to hear what the captain was saying. Capullo's in here somewhere. When you find him, see what he wants and do what he says. If he doesn't have anything for you to do, come see me. He then turned on his heel and walked away. I moved further into the tight quarters and barely heard Capullo yelling over the engines. If you're actually in here, rookie, I'm under engine 2. I stepped over several tools and scrap electronics, ducking at one point to avoid a particularly live wire, and found the top of his head poking out from underneath the grated floor. Hey there, kid, he said without looking up. You ever do an engine scrub? No, I responded hesitantly. Good, he said with a wide grin as he pulled himself up with his thin arms. His teeth contrasted heavily against his dark, oil-stained skin. Why is that good? Because then you'd know how much it sucks and wouldn't do it. Now get your ass in the hole and listen close. Day 21. I thought these pods were programmed to work unmanned, I asked Prim and Ava. The two wanted me to do a run to the cutter for some supplies they had ordered. Yeah, they are, but the cutter's crew is too busy to load it up. That's why we're sending you. Prim's usually large grin seemed suspiciously more mirthful than usual. Okay, fine, but can't one of you two go get them? They're your supplies. Joys of being the low man on the totem pole, Rez, Ava said matter-of-factly. She had a way of stating the obvious that wasn't outright insulting, but damn close. Fine, whatever, I relented at last. They going to know what I'm there for? Oh yeah, you're all set. Shouldn't be more than an hour. His grin was so wide now, I was afraid his mouth might rip. The pod was shaped like a large oval. At the front, there were a pair of seats with a simple control setup. The rest of it had straps and sections in place to hold supplies down. It seemed like it was built so that even the simplest of folk could handle it. I strapped into the seat, hit a few keys, and felt the pod jerk out of its tiny dock. I maneuvered myself away from the Morgan and towards the cutter, whose real name I still didn't know. The cutter was a ways in the back of the drive, and would take me at least 20 minutes to reach. I put my hands behind my head and relaxed as the autopilot took control. The Blackguard was the first ship I crossed. She was a black Model T6 ship, almost invisible when against the backdrop of space. The T6 was built for speed and run-and-gun fighting, both very good traits for a scout ship. Once we hit deeper space, she would fly off and make sure the way was clear for us. A few kilometers more, I crossed the Gila. Basically a repurposed tugboat. Her job was to reorientate any asteroids that flew off course from the rest. The blocky ship wasn't pretty, and I was hard-pressed to find a section that wasn't dented or scrapped in some way, but she looked sturdy. I got within 30 kilometers of the cutter when it started to happen. The pod's single thruster threw out a burst of plasma and shot me forward unexpectedly. The sudden momentum pushed me deep into my seat. I fought against the momentum to power down the pod, but before I could reach the kill switch, the engine stopped. The strap of my seat pulled hard against me as I flew forward, barely stopping me from cracking my head against the controls. I had a moment to try and figure out what had happened before the engines kicked on again. Instead of shooting forward, this time the pod began spinning in place. It spun faster and faster until the stars left trails in my eyes. After a few seconds more, the pod slowed down to a stop. I knew the ride had ended, but my brain was still rattling around in my head. I smacked the comm that led directly to the Morgan's bridge. "Captain!" I shouted into the mic, frantically looking at the controls while I spoke. "I don't know what's going on here, but there's something wrong with the pod." "Easy, kid," he said back coolly. "Don't lose your head yet. Are you leaking oxygen? Is the pressure dropping?" The steadiness of his voice helped me calm down a little, but I was still desperate to find a solution. "No, sir. The ship's propulsion is going nuts. It's got me bouncing all over the place like a damn pinball." "What does the console read?" I looked at the monitors again to see if they could give me some kind of answer. "It looks like everything's normal. I've had the autopilot on since I left the ship. I must have hit a wrong sequence or something." "I've got an idea of what the problem might be. Hang tight for a second." While the comms were silent, the pod made several more ridiculous maneuvers before stopping dead in its tracks, leaving me floating at a slight angle. The captain's voice came through the comm. "There, that fix it?" "Seems like it," I replied, unsure. I held on tight to the seat in case it started to act up again. "You can thank Prim and Ava for it stopping. And it starting. And then stopping again." "What do they have to do with this? I asked suspiciously. It was a prank, kid. Pretty good one if I'm being honest. They let you set off on your own, but then activated the remote controls here. They've got a camera in the pod too. To your left a bit. There you go. Wave high for us. I stared at the tiny camera and felt my face grow red with a combination of rage and embarrassment. Yeah, they got all that on footage. Get ready to see that 12 times a day for the next few weeks. Now hurry up and get those supplies we need. The captain clicked off the comms. I swatted the camera off the wall and shut it off. Day 58. Capullo and I sat down to eat in the kitchen. Throughout the day I had caught him mulling something over. A thought or something he couldn't seem to let go, but didn't want to talk about. You got something to say? I asked as I stabbed at my synthetic steak. I guess I do, Flyboy, he said, waving his fork around. Your real name's Rez, and your dad's name was Ray, right? Stop calling me Flyboy, and yes, those are our names. So you're telling me your family had a kid 25 generations back that was named Rhea, and they decided to name their kid Reb, and so on? I just nodded my head and grunted around a mouthful of food. That's the goddamn dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life, and I've eaten chunks of asteroid on a bet. I lifted my eyebrow at him. You're not that smart yourself, are you? You want stupid? Someone in your family had to go through life as Rur. That's about as dumb as you can get. You'll be happy to know I don't plan to keep the tradition up with my kid. What tradition? Yosem asked as he joined us at our table, Sabine close on her husband's heels. We were talking about Flyboy's real name and how it's stupid. You mean how his name's Rez and his dad's name is Ray? I think it's pretty cool. You know anyone else's family that has tradition going back that far? Sabine looked at me and gave me a wink. She liked to back me up whenever she caught the other crewmen making fun of me. Not that I couldn't handle them myself, but I did appreciate the gesture. Think about it though, Sabi. Down the line, there was a person named Rur. Yosem chimed in. That's what I was saying! How can you go through life with a name like that? Better than Flyboy, I mumbled into my food, which of course Capullo heard. You got a problem with Flyboy? It's just so stupid, I whined. Give me a name for something cool I did, not for falling for a prank like some skis. I wouldn't worry about it if I were you. We've all had a dumb nickname at one point or another. Eventually, everyone either forgets it, or you do something to earn a new one. It seemed like Yosem was speaking from experience. Wait, you had a pretty bad one yourself, didn't you, Yosem? Sabine asked with a giggle. Oh yeah, it was awful. He put down his spoon and started telling his story. Years back, I was going into the bathroom, but I slipped on the way in, and my arm got lodged into the toilet. I'm already loving this story, Capullo said, leaning forward on the table. It gets better. So I'm elbow deep in the toilet trying to pry my arm free. I'm grasping for something to push off of with my left hand when all of a sudden, I hear a click. You hit the flush button, didn't you? Capullo was smacking the table lightly, doing his best to hold back his laughter. That's exactly what I did. I got lucky and didn't get sucked through or anything, but it did dislocate my shoulder. When I scream in pain, one of the guys comes running in. He sees me sitting down with my arm in the toilet and tears running down my face. He puts two and two together and starts laughing his ass off. And thereafter, I was flush. At this, Capullo was no longer holding back and guffaws loudly. He throws his head back as his shoulders heave up and down like he was having a fit. Sabine put her arm across Yosem's shoulder and pulled him in close, burying her laugh in his long hair. Yosem took it all in stride. Like I said, don't worry about it, Rez. If I was able to live with Flush, you can handle Flyboy. Day 189. Captain Everett radioed that we were going to spot the belt soon. Capullo said it was something worth seeing, so he sent me up to do some work by the bridge so I could catch a glimpse. I didn't really think it would be that big a deal, but he was adamant about it. I loitered by the bridge, my work long since done, and kept my eye on the space outside. You up here to catch a glimpse of the belt? Ah! I jumped at the unexpected comment, hitting my head on the doorway. Ooh, bet that hurt. Didn't feel great, I ground out through clenched teeth. Smaller ship like this, you gotta watch your headspace. Now quit blocking my doorway. He pointed towards an empty chair inside the cockpit. If you're gonna be hanging around, you might as well sit down. I nodded at him and took a seat while he manned the captain's chair. I wasn't there long before I got to see what I wanted. Through the bridge's window, I saw what drove us to fly almost 6 months to get to, and I was not disappointed. Either way I looked, I could see thousands of asteroids as they floated through space in a semi-straight line. The belt was surrounded by a cloud of debris that glittered as the light hit it. It was like there was a light show going on deep within the belt, and we were just getting to see part of it. Looking closer, I noticed some of the asteroids seemed to have their own orbit. Smaller rocks would get pulled in close, then sling out to collide into a different asteroid. From there, it might bounce around or get pulled into a new orbit. I marveled at the belt in all of its glory. As I watched everything dance and shimmer within, I started to realize how difficult our job would be. Not only were we going to change the course of the entire belt, but deal with them as they bounced and ricocheted off one another. It would be impossible to predict where they could fly off once we got involved. "Captain," I said, pulling my eyes away from the belt, "how are we gonna do this? There's got to be thousands of asteroids out there. We've got barely a dozen ships between us." The captain turned in his chair and gave me a knowing look. "Don't worry, Flyboy. We've got a few tricks and tools to use here. You just sit back and try and learn something." Day 251. Prim and Fly, get to Pod 1 on the double. We've got ourselves a spinner. I wasn't totally sure why a spinner was so important, but I knew better than to ignore an order. I hopped out of my bunk and made my way to the pod. Prim was busy typing away in the console by the time I arrived. I slapped him on the back hard once I got close enough. He stopped typing and inhaled sharply through his teeth. "You're just making it harder for yourself, Flyboy." "Whatever you say, man. I'm just hoping you'll think of something better than your last prank. It didn't even take me 5 minutes to cut my bed from the wall," I said with a smirk. My prank war with Prim had been going on for months, and it was only getting worse, it seemed. "Don't worry about me. I think you'll enjoy what I've got brewing." He looked back at the console. "We've got more important things to worry about, though. If we don't get that spinner back with the others now, we'll lose her for good." What's so bad about losing one asteroid? I know it sucks that we'll lose some money, but it can't be worth rushing after every asteroid that breaks loose. It's bad because we don't know where it's going to end up. Before we get started, yes, it's most likely to just float off in space doing nothing. If it hits a ship or a planet, though, we'd be on the hook for any damage it causes, and that would cost us way more than just going out to grab it. I shrugged my shoulders in acceptance. "Alright, I guess I get it. Why do we have to take care of it in the pod, though? Can't the captain just capture it with one of those rocket bots?" Prim shook his head. "Sure he could, but he's busy watching the rest of the asteroids in the belt. Our spinner nailed a few on the way out, and he's got to be ready to deal with them if they get loose. The two of us can handle this one by ourselves." Prim finished with the console and shoved it back into the wall. "We're all set. Let's go." I followed the stocky man inside and buckled myself in next to him. We disengaged from the Morgan and flew off from the rest of the drive. In the distance, I could see the rogue asteroid dancing around. Its odd shape and momentum were making it spin at wild angles and shift in all different directions at random. Okay, so here's what's going to happen. Prim pushed the throttle forward as we flew toward the asteroid. I'm going to put us in position while you give her the eye. Prim hit a few keys and a joystick and targeting visor moved in front of me. "What's the eye?" I asked while trying to figure out how my new controls worked. After a few seconds, the visor lit up. I leaned forward and placed my face against it and realized I was looking out from the top of the pod. Capullo built it a few years ago. It's a repurposed pulse cannon. Instead of firing a single beam of energy, though, he made it launch out in a wide circle. Doesn't do shit for damage, but it's great for pushing asteroids around. "Yeah, but why is it called the Eye?" "Because one look and an asteroid goes running. Now get ready, I'm about to line her up." "Be careful how much power you put into your shot." He checked his screen on his right. "From where we're at, I wouldn't give it more than 45%. I nodded at his directions while I continued experimenting with the controls. A number on the side of the screen rose with how far on the joystick I pulled. I let it return to the center and the number dropped to 0. "Okay, I think I got it," I said, feeling confident. Let me know when you're all set. Yup, Prim said as he focused on his task. He maneuvered the asteroid between us and the drive, matching its speed along the way. We're good. Hit it while you've got a shot. I pulled back in the joystick slowly and watched the number rise to where I wanted it. Just as I went to hit the trigger, the asteroid shifted to the right. Prim moved the pod to follow, but the sudden motion forced my hand back. Unable to stop myself, I hit the trigger with the cannon at almost 75%. The blast sent out a green ring of energy that pushed us back. The spinner was sent rocketing toward the drive. Shit, 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 shit! I repeated in horror as I watched the chunk of rock head directly toward the other asteroids. Thoughts of the belt breaking apart and soaring in every direction crossed my mind. I was about to break the entire drive in a single masterstroke of failure. Prim reacted much more calmly than I did. He smashed the comms to the ship and warned the captain about what was coming. Captain! Spinner's heading towards the belt fast. We'll intercept if we can. God damn it! You two had one job! I could just imagine the captain lifting out of his seat with the exclamation. Do what you can to slow it down, and don't kill yourselves in the process. I'll get Thorn's ship on the other side to try and catch anything that shakes loose. The comms clicked off and Prim spat out an angry flurry of curses that would have made a priest faint. Here's what we're gonna do, Fly, he said violently. He was so deadly focused ahead he didn't bother turning to look at me. Put the eye at 60% and hold it there. We're gonna fly above the asteroid and shoot it down and away from the belt. If we time this right, it'll slow down the asteroid and force it below the belt while pushing us up and over. And if not, in that case, we'll probably crash right in the belt and get ourselves killed. My breath stuck in my throat as what he said sank in. I'd rather not die, I squeaked out. Agreed, so don't fuck up this time. We sailed towards the asteroid, Prim constantly adjusting our path so that we would be above it. The radar showed the belt getting closer. Meters ticked down faster and faster as we tried to catch the asteroid. My grip held strong at 60%. Prim got above the asteroid and hit a side booster at the last second, spinning us into position. Now! I closed my eyes and hit the trigger. The eye fired and I felt us jolt backwards. When I didn't feel us explode, I opened my eyes and saw the spinner through the gaps in the asteroid's belt. It was slowly floating below the rest of its siblings, harmlessly dancing to the other side where Thorn was waiting. Prim and I both cheered loudly and grabbed each other in a tight hug. Nice job, boys, the captain said over the comm. Disaster averted. Thorn's crew will handle the rest of it. You two have done enough for now. The comm clicked off and the two of us enjoyed our moment of triumph. Day 397. The atmosphere in the ship was tense. No matter how I tried to occupy myself, it felt like there was a knife inching towards my throat. The Blackguard got a ping on one of the sensors she left on our route back home. The next day, another one pinged. That one was much closer to us. After the second sensor, Captain Everett had us divert and hole up on the far side of a local moon. Until the captain knew what caused the sensor to go off, he put the drive on hold. We set up a makeshift pen for the asteroids. It took us every bit of 11 hours to get it all in place, but our bounty was safe inside and not going anywhere. Eventually, the sense of dread got to be too much for me, and I had to talk to someone. I found Capullo cataloging the ship's emergency suits. Seeing him at work made the situation seem much more real. Is there anything we can do besides wait? I'm going crazy here, I said, pacing back and forth. Capullo leaned against the wall next to the suits and gave me a shrug. Not really. The captain's gonna want to keep us here for a day at least. If we try to take the belt running, they'll catch us for sure. At least this way they might pass right by. Alright, fine. I threw my arms up in the air and stopped pacing. Please tell me you know some kind of trick for dealing with this anxiety. I'm getting ready to bounce up the walls here. Oh, I know a few ways, but it's probably best if we stay sober at the moment. He gave me his patented half-grin look. We don't need to be tripping over each other if the fighting starts. We're lucky we aren't on the Blackguard or Lonely Dancer. Why? What are they doing? I asked. They're out there right now trying to paint a few trails away from us. He began counting down on his fingers. They lay down a few energy trails, maybe bounce a comm relay here and there. I once heard a ship that blew a pod full of fuel and sent it out into the deep for the spacers to follow. Our scouts will do whatever they can to lure away whatever's on our trail. That doesn't sound that bad. I said honestly, enjoying the idea of being out there and testing my mettle against another crew. They're out there doing something. Even getting shot at can't be as bad as just waiting. Capullo shook his head. Whatever you say, man. I'm perfectly fine not getting shot at. Only the really crazy captains run a scout ship anyways. I was about to ask him another question when the alarms began blasting throughout the ship. Red lights awoke to the sound of the blaring siren, bathing us both in its crimson glare. Capullo pushed out the wall and began booking it towards the engine room. As I moved to follow, I remembered our briefing earlier and where our stations were. I was assigned to the port side turret to run maintenance and assist our gunner, Ting Wei. Ting Wei was a small Taiwanese woman with tight-cut hair and a constant angry glare. She was reserved to even the most senior members of the crew. I beat her to the turret, my heart beating hard in my chest. I quickly confirmed that the targeting protocols were active, the gun's power supply was good, and a few other quick checks that had to be done. As I worked, I tried my best to keep calm, but it felt like holding back a tornado with a hand fan. The captain appeared in a tiny window on my screen. His voice, as steady and reassuring as ever, cut the sirens off. Okay, boys and girls, here's the download. Dancer just sent us a message that we've got incoming ships. They weren't able to confirm, but the numbers are somewhere between 8 and 12. Dancer will be here soon, but the Blackguard's much further out, so we can't rely on them at the moment. Cookie and his drones will be covering the asteroids. Us, Chrome, and Gila will be flying around as decoys for the spacers to shoot at. We've got the armor and the shields to last, so we'll be fine. The rest of the ships will focus on taking the spacers out. Stay sharp, everybody. We've got this. With that, he winked up the screen and left us to our work. I stared at the blank screen, almost willing it to bring the captain back to re-explain the plan. Ting Wei came up shortly afterwards. She must have caught my wide-eyed stare, the way my hands shook over the console controls. I felt her grab me by the shoulders and spin me around. She looked me straight on as she spoke. If you freeze up like this in battle, we will die. Stay calm and watch the monitor. If anything comes up, tell me what it says. But we're going out there to get shot at. I took a moment to swallow my fear. There's got to be a... She cut me off. The captain is no fool. His plan is a good one, but it needs all of us to work. Can you handle that? I shook myself out of my stupor and nodded. Yeah, I've got it. She nodded in response and situated herself into the turret without another word. I was still fairly nervous about the captain's plan, but Ting Wei's calm demeanor kept me in the moment. The battle went just as the captain said. We put ourselves out there for the spacers to fire at, and they took the bait. We couldn't dish out as much punishment as they could, but our ships held out against their attacks. As they focused on us, the rest of the drive was able to fly out from the penned-in asteroids and launch their ambush. The spacers weren't ready for that. They panicked and broke ranks immediately. Some of them focused on the new attacking ships, while others tried to double down on us. I saw one or two fly off entirely, leaving the fighting to their companions. The battle only lasted a few minutes, but every moment seemed to drag twice as long as it should have. By the end of it, we demolished or disabled 5 of their ships. We took a few hits as well. Thorn's engine got destroyed and Gila took a bad missile hit and lost a few crewmen. Overall, though, we made it out okay. Ting Wei unfolded herself from within the turret. I had been making calls to her non-stop during the fight, keeping her updated on the gun's readings while she blasted away at any target she could. Watching her handle the gun was like watching a musician create music. Almost everything was second nature, and even the basic motions like reloading were handled with precision. So, I said, voice shaking lightly as the adrenaline drained out of me, how'd I do for my first space battle? She gave me a single pat on the shoulder. You weren't bad. Now let's go. We've got much to do. Day 444. Push! With your legs! Fly! Capullo grunted out as we tried to move the heavy table across the kitchen. Shut up, Cap! We gave the table a final shove and it screeched into place. We caught our breath for a moment while I looked around at the kitchen's new look. All the monitors boasted new backgrounds that shifted between several different designs. There were silver and gold decorations that hung from the ceiling. They looked like a mix of different holiday decorations all thrown together, but no one seemed to care. An entire section of the counter space was filled with drinks, some of which bubbled up with smoke. Capullo pushed off the table. Okay, cool. That's all set. Help me with the food now. I'm still not sure what this party is for, I replied, grabbing a tray of tiny sandwiches from him. It's kind of hard to explain, he said while placing his tray of food on the table. It's more like a tradition than a party. On the 444th day, we appreciate how far we've gone on the drive and how much further we need to go. Why is the date so specific, though? It's an in-between time for a drive. If the drive's done before this point, then we don't need the celebration. If it's going to last any longer, then we'll be testing our luck not doing this. I never took the captain for being a superstitious kind of guy. He really isn't, but before he ran his own drives, his captain made them do this for all their long drives. After celebrating for so long, it's just the thing he needs to do now. Doesn't feel right otherwise. I still wasn't totally sure about the need to celebrate, but I wasn't one to avoid a party. The rest of the setup didn't take much time. Eventually, everything was done and the crew was milling about. I was busy listening to Ting Wei explain the finer points of gunmanship when the captain's voice rang out over the room. Alright, you jokers, listen up! He yelled with a half-full glass in his hand and a rosy flush to his cheeks. Apparently the captain had already started drinking. First, I'd like to have a moment of silence for the men and women we've lost on the drive. They will be missed, but not forgotten. He held his glass up, and the rest of us followed suit. After several moments, he began anew. Next, I'd like to give a thank you to you lot. We've had our fuck-ups and hurdles to cross, but they never stopped us. For that, I say well done. He raised his glass again, but this time it was met with a chorus of cheers. Yeah, whoop it up. Tonight's for us to have fun, but tomorrow's another day on the drive. So drink up, chow down, and let's cheer to a successful drive. We cheered again and many of us slammed our drinks back and went for more. There was plenty of partying among the crew, but as time wore on, the kitchen slowly emptied out. At the end, only the captain and I were left. As the new guy, most of the crew made it their job to make sure there was a drink in my hands at all times. My vision was blurred and my head kept falling forward, but the captain seemed as sober as ever. He was leaning back in his chair watching me, rolling his empty glass on the table. Feeling a little tired there, Fly? My eyes fluttered open and I gave him an uneven smile. No, sir. I can. But the words didn't leave my lips as my head fell forward again. Alright, that's enough of that. Let's go. He left his chair and walked over to me. I was dully aware of him lifting me up and throwing my arm over his shoulder. Use your legs, kid. I'm too old to carry you by myself. After a bit of struggling, the captain got me to my bunk. I collapsed onto my bed face first. The quiet sounds of the crew sleeping around me were working as a lullaby against me. Night, kid. Can't wait to see The Hangover tomorrow. I heard a glass tink against the ground near my bed before the captain walked out. I didn't know it at the time, but my hangover the next day would become legendary on the Morrigan. Day 556. It was weird being on the spaceport. After spending all that time on the ship, not moving through space didn't feel right. From where I stood, I watched the Crimson Logistics ships prepare the asteroids we brought to be mined. While the captain was busy getting our pay, most of the crew had run to the nearest brothel or bar. Capullo stepped up to me, a large drink in hand and a satisfied grin on his face. Fly, I don't know how you're still here. After my first drive, I didn't leave the whorehouse for 3 days. That's not even exaggerating either. I was actually there for 3 entire days. Don't you know, Cap? The longer you wait, the better it feels. You wait any longer and you're gonna shrivel up and die down there. I shook my head and kept watching the ships work. Capullo finished his drink and tossed it into a nearby recycling chute. You coming with us on the next drive? He asked at last. I think so. but 3 months is a long time. There's a lot of stuff I missed while we were on the ship. I feel like I've got some catching up to do. Yeah, we all get that way at one point. Trust me though, a few weeks in, and all you're going to be thinking about is being back out there. He waved his arm out at the open universe for emphasis. It's a strange feeling being around family and friends after all that time on the drive. Going back to society with all its rules and expectations, it weighs on you after you've experienced the freedom of the deep. Nothing to rely on out there but ourselves. His voice got wispy at the end, like a part of him was already yearning to be out there. Whatever you choose though, it was nice working with you. He stuck his hand out to shake. Now if you'll excuse me, I hear a few handsome men calling me back. See you around, Fly. He waved me off and walked back towards the brothel with a skip in his step. I remained standing by the large observatory window. I thought back on what Cap said and everything we'd experienced on the drive together. Maybe he was right. The pull from the deep might be too strong to resist. I had the next few months to think about that though. For now, the only pull I felt was to the nearest bed. Ideally, one with a woman or two for company.
Tales of the Void is a collection of stories written and performed by Jacob Conflitti. Music and production by Robert Labadie. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed. Until next time.